It's been over 50 years since Nigeria became independent, yet the dignity of the average Nigerian remains contested. As we speak, over 60% of Nigerians live in abject poverty. About 100 million Nigerian youths are either unemployed or underemployed. At 10.5 million school-age children, Nigeria has the highest out-of-school population in the world. Western democracy has been presented as a potential vehicle to transform Nigeria's political space, but it has failed. Elections have become an exclusive platform for rich and powerful Nigerian men to facilitate their preferred political candidates into political offices. Voting has become a choice between former military rulers, ill-prepared politicians, and Nigerian elites who are largely disconnected from the diverse lived realities of marginalized Nigerians. Critical onlookers of the Nigerian situation should ask and must ask, how is the Nigerian education system preparing a new generation of Nigerians who will transform the country into a just, inclusive, economically prosperous, and an economically independent nation? I have some answers. Growing up in Nigeria, I had very bold and colorful dreams of becoming a leader. When I arrived in Canada at the age of 16, I realized how little I knew about my history, about my heritage as an Igbo, Nigerian, and Black woman. The curriculum I was exposed to in Nigeria upheld the superiority of European knowledge, European scholarship, European geography, and presented our indigenous ways of being as inferior, savage, uncivilized. Shamefully, it was only in 2014 when Chimamanda Adichie's book, Half of a Yellow Sun, came as a movie to Toronto International Film Festival that I learned about the Nigerian Civil War as a personal truth. To be clear, the Nigerian Civil War claimed about 2 million lives. It affected immediate members of my community. Until today, it continues to influence the social, economic, and political relationships in the country. But this isn't just about me. Meet Mimi. Mimi is from Kogi State in Nigeria, a state that will be considered a minority state. Mimi told me how she went through school in Nigeria, having her Kogi cultural identity never acknowledged. During classes and events in school, Mimi had to assimilate herself under one of the 3 major ethnic groups, or assume what she described as a neo-Nigerian identity that is characterized by purchasing power and an ability to exhibit Western norms and mannerisms. Beyond the cultural alienation within the education system, almost all the Nigerian youths I have spoken to through the course of my master's and doctoral research have continued to tell me how the Nigerian education system wasn't really geared towards them learning or finding their passion. It was more geared towards making them cram culturally irrelevant materials and regurgitating it during exams. Now, this exam-centered approach to schooling and to measuring success is putting many young girls in public schools in precarious situations. Meet Mata. I met Mata in Abuja. She went to a public school in Abuja. And she told me how her teacher constantly harassed her, her maths teacher, and he attempted to rape her 9 times. Mata's maths teacher understood the power he had over her outcomes as a secondary school graduate. He also understood that there was little oversight in the school and he could get away with whatever he did. Mata didn't bother complaining about this incident because in the past, many girls complain and no one does anything about it, or these girls become the target of other teachers. There's the case of Trust. I met Trust in Lagos. He attended a public school in Lagos. Trust is blind, he's passionate, he's focused, and he wants to change the world. He started his education in this public school in Lagos, wanting to pursue a career in the sciences. But Trust was told that there were limited resources to support that aspiration. So he was pushed into the arts. Even within the arts, there were limited resources to support him. Trust told me that the first time he was able to feel an economics supply and demand graph was during an entrance exam to the university. Now let this sink in. How is it that a so-called independent nation continuously graduates students who are disconnected from their culture, who are amputated from their heritage, who embody a self-denigrating sense of self, who uphold the superiority of European culture over their immediate environment, over the heritage of their ancestors? How is it that a so-called independent nation that is as rich as Nigeria is unable to provide basic learning resources for young people to pursue their academic aspirations or their passion in an environment that is safe, inclusive, and welcoming of all? Through the course of my doctoral research, I decided that I was going to take it upon myself to figure out what about the way the Nigerian education system has come to be that is enabling these outcomes. What I found is the Nigerian National Curriculum Conference of 1969, which was the first conference Nigeria had as an independent nation. And the purpose of this conference was to indigenize the colonial education system that we inherited. But this conference failed. It failed on three critical grounds. First, the conference was exclusive. Exclusive in the sense that it only included your professionals, your elites, scholars. It excluded the everyday Nigerians, like your vulcanizers, the market women, or people living in rural areas that are still very attached to their indigenous knowledge systems and ways of being. Tragically, this conference occurred during the Nigerian Civil War. Apart from the insensitivity and the injustice associated with holding such a critical conference within the backdrop of a bloody war, this conference effectively excluded a critical mass of Nigerians that held anti-colonial views. Secondly, this conference misconceptualized what decolonization is. The recommendations that emerged from this conference assumed that colonization was just about political and economic control by the British. But that's not what decolonization is about. Decolonization was first of all about intellectual subjugation, cultural amputation. And it was within the vacuum of these amputations that a foreign system was now imposed. Now, the new purpose of education that was supposed to come out of this conference was simply about Nigerians being economically independent, economically mobile, within the same colonial economic system that they inherited. Thirdly, the conference under-conceptualized what decolonization ought to be about. If colonization was about amputating cultures, dislocating people from their lands, amalgamating diverse ethnic nations that had nothing or little in common, decolonization within the context of this conference should have meant redefining the terms on which these diverse nations must remain together within a new vision of Nigeria that is anti-colonial. But that didn't happen. This conference continued to uphold the Eurocentric knowledge system that sustained the colonial education system that they inherited. Instead of replacing the Eurocentric education system with a multi-centric knowledge base that is reflective and connected to the people in Nigeria, the conference continued to uphold this European vision of success. If you think critically about these three foundational and historic flaws in the education system, you would see that my experiences, Mata's experiences, Mimi's experiences, Trust's experiences are expected. Nothing surprising about them. The education system was not designed to be inclusive. It wasn't designed to make Nigerians think anew about themselves. It wasn't designed to help Nigerians understand their shared heritage. It wasn't designed for leadership that would be relevant to our context. You would agree that the entire education system is actually broken, and it was designed that way. So what do? Having lived in Canada and studied in Canada for about 15 years now, I have come to see the critical role public education systems play in pushing every society towards realizing the democratic ideals that they uphold. This has further emboldened my conviction about the need for every nation to have a strong and quality public education system. Within the context of Nigeria, I think Nigerians need a new process through which an education policy is created. One that is people-centered as opposed to elite-centered. And that process should provide a platform for us to re-envision a new education system that is connected to the diverse knowledge systems within the country. An education system that would enable every young person that comes into the school system, in spite of their differences, to feel welcomed. Nigeria needs a new education system that helps it to deal with the injustices that the country has been built on. Nigeria needs a new system that is African-centered and continuously oriented towards the democratic transformation of the country. Within the context of my research and my advocacy, after my PhD, I'm hoping to begin a grassroots education reform movement. This grassroots education reform movement will provide a platform for young Nigerians across the country to begin a critical conversation about what it means to be a Nigerian and what it ought to mean to be a Nigerian. And then they would be able to reflect on their current schooling experiences and re-envision what a new system of education should be like. The hope would be that young people across the country would develop their localized manifestos on education. And the aggregation of these manifestos across the country would help us create a grassroots manifesto of education that young people, everyday Nigerians, can take up to the political arena. They can use it to engage in changing the education policy in the country. Within the international community, I think everyone needs to take some time to think critically about how the world that we live in has come to be. Colonization is a fact. Many countries are still dealing with its legacies. My experiences and the other experiences I just told you about are one of the many offshoots of these impacts. So I think people outside of the continent need to spend time thinking about how is it that this world that we live in, that is based on a Eurocentric knowledge system, came to be. Decolonization isn't over. It must continue. I think the international community also, people can start to spend more time looking at the foreign policies that their respective countries have and identifying ways in which foreign policy continues to entrench colonialism. English is not the indigenous language of many African countries, of every African country. So why should students in my village continue to learn in English? Students in my village should learn about the Omenan in their land. They should learn about the Ordinala in their land. They should learn about the 4 market days. I think also that everyone needs to be able to advocate for strong public education systems within African countries. Now, more people are presenting private education as a solution to Africa's problem. But no developed country, quote unquote, became what it is with a proliferation of private schools. So well-intentioned citizens, global citizens, have a responsibility to articulate the need for foreign policies to support more public education. Because it is only public education that will provide African countries like Nigeria the opportunity to redefine what it means to be Nigerian, to contest these differences. We've come a long way as a world. About 200 years ago, people like me were mere slaves, were disposable, and someone else's property. But we're here. A lot of progress has been made, but much more needs to be done. And I'm really hopeful. And I'll end on Margaret Mead's quote, because I think it connects to the power of citizenship. It connects to the power of events like this. And Margaret Mead says, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So I hope my presentation today has given everyone something to think about, hopefully inspires a bit more thoughtfulness and commitment to the project of decolonization globally. Thank you.